So the Trofinetide is an interesting product. It is the last three amino acids of the insulin-like growth factor, which is a growth factor we all have. And it is actually an approved product, the whole factor, for treatment of individuals who have growth failure due to IGF-1 deficiency. About 15 or years ago, a group at MIT used this terminal tripeptide and showed in a mouse model of Rett syndrome that there was a substantial improvement in these mice who were treated with this compound. If we then fast forward to the early teens, a company originally from New Zealand, but then in Australia, modified the terminal tripeptide to make it orally available and to increase its half-life so that it could be used as an effective product. So the initial studies with Trofinetide were sponsored by a company called Neuren, N-E-U-R-E-N, and that those two studies were first in adults and then in children with Rett syndrome. First of all, it was safe, and it showed a potential improvement in some features of Rett syndrome. To manifest or engage in a large phase 3 study, Acadia was brought in, and they had the phase 3 study, which was the Lavender trial. And that 12-week trial did show a significant improvement, which allowed the FDA in the spring of last year to approve this medication. Prior to that, the DAFFODIL study was begun, and I should say the Lavender trial was in girls 5 to young women 20 years of age. The DAFFODIL trial was initiated to look at girls 2 to 4 years of age. That was a smaller trial. It was open label, as opposed to the double-blind placebo-controlled trial of the Lavender and Lilac series. But that trial did show substantial improvement, and in the same vein as in the Lavender trial. We know from the natural history study that the top concern that parents have, 25%, which is a really high number, of the parents listed this as their first concern, and that is the inability to communicate effectively with their daughters. They couldn't ask them questions, or they couldn't figure out what their girls wanted at any given moment. And indeed, in the DAFFODIL trial, this was the principal positive feature. It was 70% or so of the relatively small number of girls, 15 in this trial, that showed improved communication. Some actually had a few words, but others were able to have better attention and to direct answers to their parents for specific considerations. There was also some improvement in hand function as well. On the perhaps concerning side, Trofinetide is not without its issues. It has been associated with increasing diarrhea and vomiting. And this was shown in the DAFFODIL trial as well. However, in most cases, at least in our experience, we've been able to manage the diarrhea with a variety of anti-diarrheal medications or dietary management. You know, initially, when the individuals went on this drug, the parents were somewhat encouraged because as opposed to diarrhea, constipation is a very, very common problem in Rett syndrome, for which we use medication regularly. But in some cases, the vomiting and diarrhea, the diarrhea in particular, were so substantial that some girls had to be withdrawn from the trial. But the overall feature is that there has been considerable improvement in this DAFFODIL trial. The interesting thing that was looked at sort of a post hoc analysis was to look at the improvement by the clinical global impression of improvement, which is a physician completed outcome measure. It's basically a 7-point scale, with 4 being no change, 5, 6, and 7 being worse or terrible, and 3, 2, and 1 being better or even approaching quite normal behavior. At the 12-week point, roughly 25% or 30% of individuals on the medication had improved 2 points. They were to a 2. But over the 78 weeks of the trial, this number increased to 50% or more than 50%. And very interestingly, in the last 2 periods of 52 and 78 weeks, everybody in the trial, all of the individuals, had improved from 2, 3, 2, or 2. And no one remained in the 4, 5, 6, or 7 range. So this was evidence that this medication could potentially have lasting effects, which with increasing improvement determined by how long they were on the medication. I think the take-home message is that any individual with Rett syndrome should at least be afforded the opportunity to access the medication. Now, you know, in a clinical trial, you're given a dose. But in an open label study, such as the drug is now available, we don't have to start at the full dose used in a trial. And we can start at a lower dose and increase gradually over a week or 2 weeks from time to time, so that over a period of a month or more, you can increase the dose to what was regarded as the effective dose by the company. So it is possible that girls can tolerate a lower dose and have less or fewer side effects, and can therefore benefit from the medication better than what we had seen in some of the trials. I think it's important to realize that trofinetide is not a cure by any means. It provides incremental improvement, and the possibility of increasing communication between a child or woman and her parents is that cannot be measured, I think, in hard facts. It's just a release for the families to be able to communicate. There may be other medications that come along such that an individual could be on a potpourri of medications that may have additive effects and improve the outcomes of these girls. However, there's also the forward-looking therapies that are ongoing now, and that is gene trials. And there are 2 active trials going on, and we look forward to the positive, or hopefully positive, outcomes of those gene therapy trials.